Now we're moving on to our next part of our program. We have the panel discussion. Now, the panel discussion features our top talent here at Rising Star, and each of the three panelists are 2017 winners of the Rising Star Awards. They are recognized not only by their organizations, but also by the Rising Star, which is an international talent recognition program, and it has done a lot for all of us in this room, and we all can agree. The facilitator today for our panel is Heather Bangwayo, who's an incredible human being at the education manager of CIMA. And also we have our future leaders, and we look forward to their insights. They're speaking under the theme, The Rewriting of Influence. So please help me welcome on stage our panelists. We've got Kenneth Kaiser, who's the VP of Open Innovation in Africa, and that's with ABSA, and also Kenneth won the Banking and Financial Services at the Rising Star this year. Give him a round of applause. Welcome, Kenneth. We also have Talia Lancaster. Talia is an agile consultant at IQ Business, and Talia won the Professional Services Rising Star this year. Welcome, Talia. And our third and final panelist for today is Alicia Moodley, who is the Senior Change Leader at ArcelorMittal, and she won the Manufacturing, Retail, and FMCG Rising Star Award. Congratulations. So these are our panelists, and we will have our panel discussion, and we have our facilitator, Heather, who's going to take over. Please give them a round of applause.
Good morning, everybody. I think, first of all, what I would like to do is just to give one more time a rousing round of applause for all the incredible, bright minds that we have in the room today. I must admit, this is the first time that I've engaged with GradStar and Rising Star Summit. And I'm just really, really amazed at the great minds that I'm seeing in one room. So can I just ask that we all give these young, brilliant people a round of applause, just to say well done for the hard work that you're doing. I tweeted just a short while ago, and one of the tweets that I was saying, one of the things that I said in my tweets was, I just really wish there was more publicity around such events. I think living in South Africa, a lot of the time, all we hear about is maths and science, and pass rates have been lowered, and it's all looking so dismal, and the country's going to crash and burn because we won't have anyone to build the country and to take the country forward. And this is why I wish that there would be more publicity and people to stand up and take notice that actually, you know what, while pass rates are going down, on the other end, we've got these young people that are doing such brilliant work. So well done, guys, and also to the organizers of this function and to ArcelorMittal, thank you so much, and may you guys live long and continue to do what you're doing. So to get into the panel discussion that we're about to enter into now, I'd like to once again just introduce the panel that we have. We have Kenneth Kaiser, the Vice President for Open Innovation in Africa at ABSA. Hello, Kenneth. And Talia, who's the Agile Consultant at IQ Business. Yep. And then Alicia Moodley, the Senior Change Leader at ArcelorMittal here in South Africa. Welcome, guys. And our topic this morning is going to be rewiring of influence. I think this is a very pertinent discussion to be having today. We all know that in this age of millennials, things are changing very quickly. A lot of the time, I still think of myself as being quite young. I'm only 33 in a few weeks, and I think I'm young. But then when I talk to my nieces who are in their teens, they talk about all manner of things that I have no idea about. And I'm thinking, how come I'm getting left behind with technology and new apps and new platforms and so on? So clearly the world is changing really quickly in terms of the technology and platforms that are available to everybody. And sometimes keeping up with this change can be quite a challenge. So I think this is a very pertinent discussion for us to have. And I would like to first start by asking the question to Kenneth. Let's unpack this topic and just get into what your understanding is of the topic rewiring of influence.
Thank you. So just some context in terms of what I do for the bank is, and I'll bring it all together, is I'm basically one of the change agents in the bank driving innovation. but from the outside, working with fintech companies, startups, and leadership in that context. The world is changing in such a fast-paced. Technology is a key driver. There's a culture change that needs to take place internally in the organization. And part of that is through leadership. You need leadership foresight where you can say, all right, there's a lot of disruption that's happening in my space, in banking, financial services. How do I, as a leader, have an open-minded approach to this and adopt a collaboration approach to things? So coming back to your question around leadership, it's about, my understanding, it's about open leadership, being able to take ideas from different people and so forth, as opposed to the conventional leadership approach, which is command and control.
Okay, I'm not sure if any of the ladies would like to also answer the question, what your understanding of the topic is. What is the rewiring of influence? I'm sure coming from such different backgrounds in the spaces that you work in, it might mean something different, and especially in how it will affect the work that you do in the spaces that you work in. So I'd just like to get to the bottom of it before we can start to unpack it even further, to say, what is your understanding of rewiring of influence? Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so it's off. Kenneth, please. So Kenneth, I think his final point there about command and control. So that's a lot of what we work with. So I work more kind of with teams, and a lot of what I do is actually undoing kind of the past of that traditional old way of leading teams. So people aren't used to thinking for themselves. They're not used to kind of innovating or taking initiative. So we actually coach teams to help become more self-organizing, to move away from that old kind of management style. So I think we need to really look at a new way of working with people and not kind of trotting them down, but actually empowering them to innovate, to think for themselves, to help lead themselves as well.
Yeah, so no, Heather, I don't have anything additional to add. My job profile is very similar to Kenneth and Talia's, so it's more of a change agent kind of responsibility that I have within the organization. So that's introducing new, innovative ways of doing things differently. And yes, rewiring does play a huge role, and it is something that needs to be focused on going forward.
Okay, and I like what you're saying there in terms of doing things differently and empowering them to work differently and doing away with old traditional ways of working. It's actually one of the points I was going to get to later, where I just want to go into what are some of the ways that you as companies, employers, organizations are empowering these young millennials to think differently and be who they are, because that is who they are. They are people who live in a different age that is really influenced and shaped by technology. So what are some of the ways that companies nowadays are empowering and allowing young employees to be the millennials that they are? And because they're very different in how they live, how they think, how they experience, and so on. So what are some of the things that our companies are doing to empower them and to nurture this?
So one of the initiatives that I'm working on at the moment, being in banking, is around how do we give millennials access to financial services. So graduates coming through, graduated, you don't have any credit history. Normally when you go to a bank, you can't get a loan and so forth. So understanding that context, and what we've done is we've worked with fintech companies to develop algorithms and a platform that allows you to use social media data, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, to give you a reputational score, and then utilizing that and combining it with our existing credit scoring models to offer you a loan. So it's understanding that millennials are different. In this case, you've got lacking credit data around your credit history, and then coming up with an innovative approach designed around the customer. And that's just a use case that I've implemented in the bank this last year. Yeah.
So Heather, at ArcelorMittal, Terence has mentioned a lot of the stuff that we are doing.
Can I just ask that you speak a little bit louder?
Okay, so Terence has mentioned earlier during the breakaway session of all the stuff that ArcelorMittal is currently doing to empower the millennials. But something that does form a stumbling block is mindset, and it's something that's quite difficult to get around. So I think a lot of work and effort needs to be put into trying to correct the mindset, or maybe create awareness around millennials so that it makes it easier going forward.
I think, so from an IQ business perspective, I actually help run the Corporate Social Responsibility Committee. And what I've found with that is that it's a lot of young people who are actually searching for meaning. So I think we're so involved in the technology and kind of disrupting and all of that. But at the end of the day, people also want an opportunity to give back to the community and to not just kind of work this day job, but to also find ways of finding meaning in what they do. Also, a lot of our committees are actually run by young people. I mean, they head up the committees, they organize the events, they engage with the beneficiary organizations. So yeah, I think it's just about creating those platforms, whether it's within kind of their day job, their traditional role in the organization, or in other ways for people to grow and to give back and to take opportunities.
Okay, I find that very interesting because I think a lot of the time when we read and talk about millennials, we're given this impression that these are young people who more and more are seeking instant gratification and don't care so much as the older generations about giving back to different communities and to different causes. So I find that very encouraging to hear, because maybe it's just me, I don't know if there's anyone else, but you get this image of millennials and young people who are always on their phones seeking instant gratification, and it's just now, me, chasing this Pokemon and, you know, tweeting and taking selfies, and it's all about us, you know, a status that will get you as many likes as possible, a selfie with the pout, you know, your latest outfits, your latest Nikes, and so on. So I find it very encouraging to hear that you've got younger and younger people getting involved in initiatives like, you know, your CSR space. So I want to get back to talking about millennials as leaders. What do you think will be some of the fundamental differences? I suppose this is you guys, because you guys are the young ones right now. Maybe you can speak for yourselves. What are some of the fundamental differences that you think will become apparent once you guys get to CEO stages and CFO stages compared to the people that are in those spaces now? I think this goes back to the traditional way of doing things that you touched on just now, but you know, this is a different breed, if we can call it that, of youth that we have now compared to what we had, say, 10 years ago. So what are some of the differences that you yourself, maybe you can speak for yourself, or maybe just talking about what you see around you with the other young people in your organization, just differences in how leadership will look like, say maybe 20, 30 years from now?
You're sharing a mic, so, so I've got it now. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing which Hans touched on is kind of the liquid workforce, I think, you know, the flexibility, the need to kind of not be necessarily locked into a very rigid hierarchical way of working. So definitely, if I can speak for myself, I mean, I've found ways to get involved in different things and to take different opportunities and kind of supplement that 8-hour workday with other things. So I think that ability to be flexible with the contract, with the way you kind of contract and work with companies, yeah, I think that's going to become more and more important. Yeah.
I agree. I think agility as leadership, making sure that your company is agile enough to understand the needs of your young workforce and make sure your policies, your processes and so forth are aligned to that. And there's many examples, flexibility around salaries and so forth that might be geared towards those younger employees and so forth. Yeah, so just agility is quite key. And having an open mind, I think. You know, as a young leader in the organization, having the platform to engage is quite key. As we've seen in large corporates, a lot of decisions get made up in the top. But I think, you know, I think going into the future, I think, you know, having leadership, top leadership, having a platform to engage with people lower down the line and making sure that their inputs and ideas are also taken into the equation in terms of co-creating strategies and so forth. Collaboration, I think, is also quite key.
Yeah, so I agree with Talia and Kenneth. Yeah, flexibility definitely, but I also think a larger focus should be placed on career development, growth opportunities, because I believe millennials are looking for this. So by introducing mobility, by introducing a platform where you can help talent, millennials grow and develop, you can probably influence retention as well. So I think all of these blocks are related, but for me, definitely career opportunities and growth.
Right, and again, that's something I think that's quite unique to this young group of people that we have in the workspaces now. Decades ago, I think in the times of our parents and our grandparents, this will mean something different to everybody because we're all different ages in here. But I think during the times of my parents and my grandparents, they were quite happy to get into their first job, whether it's an apprenticeship or as a nurse, as a teacher, and stay there for their entire career, for their entire working life. But I think it's becoming more and more apparent now that young people going into their careers and into the workspaces are looking to grow. They want career growth, they want development, they want to be able to move from one company to another, they want to be able to change their minds and say, you know what, actually maybe engineering is not for me. Maybe I'm supposed to be a dancer. That's what I want to do with my life. So I think this is something that's quite unique to the young people, the young faces that we have in industry now. They have choices, they're not afraid to make those decisions, to change and make the leap, and this is certainly very exciting. Next, I want to move on to quite a potentially controversial question, but I just want to look at, young millennials are being portrayed as the next big thing. They've got this wealth of information at their fingertips, on their tablets, on their phones, and so on. But there's the saying that goes, too much of a good thing can be bad. So at what point do we draw the line and say, okay, fine, millennials, we appreciate, you young minds, we appreciate the freshness and the new dynamic that you bring into the workspace, but at what point do you think that can be too much of a good thing, if you understand my question? So you might have to do some self-searching now and say, maybe this outspokenness that I have might not be a good thing, or maybe this, desire to move from job to job might not be a good thing, or maybe all this information that I have at my fingertips might not be a good thing. I suppose it's different for everyone and for the space that you're working in.
I mean, I spoke earlier about agility, the organization being agile, and I think in its processes and policies, I think, if there is certain behavior points that will be to the detriment of the company per se, through the behavior of these, I call it millennials, then I think that there should be policy, it should be agile enough to make, for amendments, as opposed for it just to be cast in stone, that's an example, and and the person leaves the company, so I think it comes down to my opinion still around to agility, having policies that are agile to address these concerns and problems.
So I've got many younger siblings, two of whom, the one's 19 and the one's 17, and they drive me crazy. So, I mean, they're always on their phone. I don't know what they're doing. They're on social media. I mean, I like Facebook, all of that, but I don't have to be on it 24/7. So I do think in that sense, too much of a good thing is bad. It depends what you're doing. I used to be in learning and development, and I have a massive appreciation for being able to access knowledge and education online. I mean, nowadays, if you want to know how to do anything, you just Google it and get onto YouTube and someone can walk you through it. That's amazing, as long as we're channeling our energy into actually looking up those kind of knowledge-based things and not just trolling someone on Instagram or whatever. So I think, again, it's that balance. It goes down to kind of from upbringing, from your family into the workplace. How do we manage that? To Kenneth's point about agility, maybe we need to just be more outcomes-based. We expect this from you every day or every week. Once you've done it, I don't care, you can sit on your phone, but I'm going to expect this to be done. If it takes 6 hours and not 8, sure, but this is how we're going to measure measure success. So instead of the bum in a seat mentality of you have to be in front of your laptop 8 hours a day, there may be better ways to kind of manage that. So I think, again, to your point, as long as we monitor it and we channel that energy in the right direction, I think it can be quite a powerful thing.
Yeah, so too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, but I think it comes back to awareness. You just need to know where your limits lie and when something can become detrimental. So I think in the back of your mind, you always need to be aware of what your end goal is and whether what you're doing is going to get you there and how fast it will. So if there's better ways of doing it, then embrace it, but always be aware of your end goal and how fast you're leading towards it.
And, I like that very much. You're saying being self-aware and I suppose it's part of maturity, and these are some of the soft skills that you will learn once you enter into the workplace, how to control yourself. Yes, you want to see who's tweeted what onto Twitter and who's put up a picture on Facebook, but I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Being aware of right now is not the time. I've got work to do, and I need to put my phone aside. Having said that, though, I think this technology has certainly changed the way that we work. It's made some processes more efficient and easier and so on, but absolutely there are times when too much technology can be a bad thing. I was reading an article just the other day about people who love to self-diagnose. So before they even go to the doctor, if they even bother to go to a doctor, they'll first consult with Dr. Google. There's nothing wrong with Dr. Google, just to get an idea of what might be wrong. But again, this, I think, goes back to the point of just too much information at your fingertips. You end up making the wrong diagnosis. And maybe sometimes people are applying this in the workplace, Googling solutions to problems that they have in the workplace. But thank you very much for that. And then next I want to go on to, so our topic being rewiring of influence. Obviously, influence does not only lie in the workplace and in corporate and in companies. There's also people who are young and coming out of school now who will choose to go and work in, say, in government or become entrepreneurs. And they will also be able to hold positions and roles of influence in those spaces. So I just want to also now go into what do you think, let's say, the governments of different countries will look like with millennials now as leaders. I'll give you an example of, I think Trump is a big talking point at the moment. He's very outspoken, and in my opinion, I think he acts very much like a young person of today. I don't know how old he is, but I certainly feel he exhibits behavior of a young, spoiled brat. Maybe it's because he's so outspoken, he tweets, I hang off a lot. His writing skills have suffered. I'm not sure if you all heard about the typo that he posted on one of his tweets, but I just want to tap your minds into what do you think leadership outside of corporate will look like. So let's say in the president of South Africa, for example, the president of Zimbabwe, for example, what will that look like with this generation as leaders?
An interesting article on my way to the conference. It was around creating a ministry of the future. It sounds crazy, but then getting a minister specifically focused around technology, innovation, bringing it together with education, understanding what are the key disruptors in the new digital economy, and getting a dedicated minister, like you've got your Minister of Finance, specifically in a portfolio that focuses on that. How do you close skills gaps? As we know, most of the jobs, a lot of the jobs in the future have not been created yet. But if you have a Minister of Finance, you'll be able to put policies in place and so forth. So from a governmental perspective, perhaps maybe introducing a new ministry of the future around the digital economy and innovation. And there's good examples. I think Malaysia, Singapore, they've got that. I think South Africa is lacking. So if I was president, I would definitely put that top of mind. Because we're definitely moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. You're going to need specific focus and political will in that space, yeah.
I think that a few young people may be offended being compared to Trump, but I do hear you. I would say maybe like an 8-year-old child, or I don't know, not teenager. Anyway, let's not get too much into American politics. But yeah, I mean, I think I think hopefully quite similar to the leadership trends we see within corporates. I mean, I understand it's a different area, but I do hope that that people will start to kind of embrace the fourth industrial revolution, to focus more kind of on knowledge work, on innovation, finding better ways of doing things. The fact that we often still have to physically go and queue in government departments, there must be a better way of doing it. So I would hope that they'd embrace technology and actually improve the service delivery. At the end of the day, we are the customers. You know, they are there to help serve us. So hopefully if they can just give it that spin and innovate for us.
I just worry, though, that having said that, we might be approaching a space we don't know now, maybe 20, 30 years from now, where there will actually be no jobs. There'll be robots serving us, you know, in restaurants, and there'll be a robot sitting here and facilitating this discussion. And, you know, so it's quite a scary thought to have, but I think certainly things are changing very much. Any input from your end?
I don't have a view, but all I can say is that however technology is embraced, I hope it's geared towards the betterment of society and life as a whole. Yeah.
So to say, I mean, to the point of robots and automation and all of that, I don't think there's anything wrong with automating very mundane tasks. I think that through that, it'll free people up to actually do more meaningful work, one would hope. So again, kind of this new revolution that we're going into, I am hopeful that we actually will create more jobs, and I'd love to see South Africa kind of take a firm step in that direction going forward. Yeah.
Okay, and then what are some of the leadership traits that you would like to see companies and countries and corporates hold on to? So whilst millennials are bringing in a different spin and a freshness and a new dynamic into everything, there's certainly a lot to be said for the old leaders that are now on their way out. So what are some of the characteristics or attributes that you would want to see held on to? Whether it's leadership styles or characteristics or anything at all that you feel, yes, while we millennials are able to bring in this sort of wealth of information and way of doing things, what are some things that you would like to see not lost, you know, in how we operate?
I think maybe I'll answer your question this way. I mean, you look at Mark Zuckerberg running Facebook. He employed, his crew is older than him, obviously, and he's used a lot of her insight around leadership and so forth. And that's really done wonders for Facebook. And I think the older generation can definitely contribute in terms of the way the experience that they've got, and the millennials utilizing that through mentorship, like Mark Zuckerberg in his case has helped Facebook. Nothing comes to mind specific, but I just thought I'll maybe just mention that and maybe answer it from that angle, that there is definitely a need for the older generation through mentorship to guide the younger generation to achieve the organization's objectives.
Yeah, so whilst embracing new technologies, I do believe that it's very important to hold on to certain values. And for me, it would be integrity, authenticity, and respect for the people around you. So no matter how far you venture into the technological revolution, yes, you should stay true to certain values and you should hold on to them.
Definitely respect. So yeah, I agree with that. And also I think discipline. So as much as we want to be agile, we want to be adaptive, you know, we also have to have discipline in everything that we do. We want to also get things done. And I think that we must definitely carry through. Yeah, it depends on who your manager is. I would say servant leadership, you know, humility, those kind of traits. I hope that we don't lose that.
Okay, great answers. And then, should companies focus on making millennials work for the business as it is right now, or should they focus on making businesses work for millennials down the road? Is there a happy medium, do you think, that can be struck here? So are we changing companies around to accommodate the millennials, or are we keeping the companies as they are and how things work and having millennials fit into what's already there?
I think businesses exist to make a profit, so the strategy needs to be around making profit. I think millennials are employees like any other age group. And yes, I think you can work around that through agility, but I think you're there to make a profit, and I think everybody, regardless of your age group, needs to be aligned to that objective, in my opinion, and the organization's strategic objectives.
So are you saying whatever, meets targets and gets the profit in? Am I hearing you correctly?
I'm saying there needs to be a broader focus as to why does the business exist, and I think, and then out of that, understanding what that is, understanding what are the inputs to get to that output, and if the input is to make sure that we have a happy millennial workforce, then it's making sure your HR policies are aligned to do that. But the end goal is for profitability. I mean, if that's your strategic objective for why the business exists.
Yeah, so I have two views. The first one is, yes, I agree with Kenneth, it is a business. You need to have a strategy which is probably geared towards profitability. But at the same time, you need to realize that employees are your company's biggest asset, and they are what gave a company its biggest competitive advantage. So I think you need to strike a happy medium, a happy balance between the two, get your EVPs geared towards assisting you to achieve this. So it's a bit of both. I don't think it's one or the other.
I agree with both of you. Can I also, I think I'm going to sit on the fence. And maybe just to build on Kenneth's point, not so much about profit, but also pleasing the customer. So we want to delight our customers, which will hopefully translate into revenue. Millennials are also going to be our customers. So they're not just going to be our employees, we're also going to be selling products to them. So I believe that the business is going to change regardless, whether we intentionally kind of drive that change, or we kind of just listen to our customers, and I think it will change organically.
And I think it's a very tricky space to be in, because for you to eventually get to that sweet spot where you found the happy medium, you need to have experimented with both models, don't you? So I think it's a very tricky space for companies to be in before they eventually get to that space. But I'm not sure if you have any more contributions, anything else that you'd like to add on, any comments or anything at all from any of you? Just if any feelings about where we're going in terms of, rewiring of influence and where technology is taking us, where millennials are taking us, just this wave that we're on.
Sorry, I'd just like to say that I'm extremely hopeful. I mean, I do know quite a lot of teenagers, and they worry me sometimes, but I do have a lot of hope for the future. I believe that with the correct guidance, with the correct adjustments, that it's very exciting and scary times that we're moving into, and I think that leadership will adapt accordingly, and the companies or the leaders who don't adapt will feel it through through maybe losing employees or that.
Just ask Nokia.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm also quite optimistic about the future, very, very hopeful. Companies need to embrace the change that lies ahead. We need to be very agile. And I think we as employees, rising stars, grad stars, we need to look forward to what's to come and realize that we need to further equip our toolboxes so that we are ready for the change, no matter what it is.
And you say it's a very exciting and scary time that we're heading into, and I absolutely agree with that. And just, I suppose as a last question I'd like to ask, what are some of the things that you feel are there to be scared about? What are some of the things that we need to take note of and be wary of as we proceed into these new uncharted territories? What are some of the things that could go wrong? What are some of the things that we might not be mindful of right now that we probably need to keep at the back of our minds, that, you know what, whilst we go into this, let's also take note of A, B, C, D?
I think without getting too technical, I think two things. So from my side, I think data privacy is quite key. With vast amount of data that's going to be flowing through the IoT economy, I think in the future, making sure that customers' data, millennials' data is protected, and that they still have a say, you know, as to who's handling their data and so forth. And I know governments have come to the party with various regulations. So data is quite key in making sure that's intact. And then secondly, is I think around cybersecurity. I think with the internet, it's created a lot of opportunities, but also I think new threats as well. I mean, we saw last year with the cyber attack on quite a number of corporates. And yeah, so I think cybersecurity is also something just to be wary of, and having mechanisms as we go into this new future, how to protect and safeguard against that.
Yeah, so to your question of what's unnerving or unsettling or what I would be afraid of, I think firstly the speed of change. It's quite rapid, and I know I definitely feel unsettled about it. The second thing that I would be fearful of is the uncharted, the unknown, what's to come. We don't know what's awaiting us in the future, so that can be quite unsettling as well.
All right, thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to the floor.